All right, everybody, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. We have a couple jam packed episodes. To start this one off, we have the Thursday night recap, as well as our Saturday games and our Sunday morning games. So, to kick things off with our Thursday night game, it was the Saints at the Rams, a game the Rams were able to win 30-22. On the Saints side of the ball, Derek Carr did have a very good fantasy day. He finished 27 of 40, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, carried the ball twice for 2 yards, which gave him 25.96, so basically 26 fantasy points. A very strong week for Derek Carr in a week that, I don't think many of us started him unless we're in deeper leagues, best balls if he was in somewhere on your roster or a dynasty league, but a very productive week for Derek Carr. Chris Olave benefited the most from that. He was targeted 13 times, caught 9 of them for 123 yards, including a 2-point conversion, so he got 23.3. That's a massive week in the playoffs for us. Rashid Shaheed was our wide receiver 2 on the team, and he also had a very good week. He was targeted 9 times, caught 5 of them for 70 yards and a touchdown. Also carried the ball once for 4 yards, 18.4. I've actually seen a couple people, due to some injuries and just last minute plays, possibly plug in Shaheed as their flex play, and if you had to do that, very solid week. A.T. Perry played 60% of snaps, saw 1 target. It was a 35-yard touchdown. 10.5 fantasy points. Taysom Hill, again, it may be lingering injuries, it may be them changing how they want to go about their offense, but he has just been non-existent the past couple weeks. Again, in this one, he played 17% of snaps, was not targeted. He rushed the ball twice for 2 yards, gave him 0.2 fantasy points. I hope that we were not starting him in this one. Juwan Johnson benefited from the lack of Taysom Hill usage. He was targeted 7 times, caught 4 of them for 48 yards and a touchdown, gave him 14.8, and he played 72% of snaps. Now getting to Kamara, who hurt us again in this one. He carried the ball 9 times for only 19 yards. That's tough, we hope. He'll make up for it in the pass game. He kind of did. He caught 5 of his 6 targets, but only for 16 yards. He gave us 8.5 on 73% of snaps. That's one that definitely hurts us. It's just he has not been running the ball efficiently, and it seems like, or it just is, a lot of his targets are right at the line of scrimmage, so, if that was 5 catches for 40 yards, and we're looking, 11 fantasy points, it's not so bad, but 8.5 definitely hurts us. And he wasn't necessarily spelled by Jamal Williams. He played 23% of snaps, but only carried the ball twice for 8 yards and had 1 target for 5 yards, so he finished 2.3. It was just not an efficient day on the ground for the Saints, but Derek Carr and the receivers we considered starting did have very solid weeks.
Yeah, and then onto the Rams side of the ball, where Matt Stafford saw him as a pretty decent start this week, and he got it done for the most part. 24 for 34, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 attempt for -4 yards. So 20.7 points for him. But we will take that.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, obviously a must start. Didn't see any targets in this one, unfortunately, but got 22 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. So he ended with 16.4 points. Something that you like to see, especially when
Yeah.
you had such an awful day on the other side of the ball from Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
That was very disappointing. Royce Freeman disappeared in this one. The backup was Ronnie Rivers, who got 6 carries for 20 yards. Whatever.
Yeah.
Tyler Higbee had his usual involvement. Got 3 targets, caught all of them for 30 yards, giving him 6 points. Not really a guy we were looking at starting, but he did his Tyler Higbee thing.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp had a fairly disappointing outing for what was championship week for a lot of people. Got 12 targets, but only caught 6 of them for 52 yards. Also had one rushing attempt for -3 yards, so that brought him under 11 to 10.9 points. Not something that absolutely destroyed you, but
Yeah.
seeing what Chris Olave did and even what Puka Nacua on his own team did, it was fairly disappointing to see that. Puka Nacua, as I mentioned, had an absolute day. 9 catches on 11 targets for 164 yards and a touchdown. Also had 2 rushing attempts for 16 yards, giving him a total of 33 points. That is the type of performance that you love to see in your playoffs, championship, whatever. Puka
Mm-hmm.
got it done. A guy who, we'd been up to this point saying he's obviously, you picked him up off the waivers. He's a league winning guy.
Yeah.
And just kind of proved his point by scoring 33 points in a championship week,
Mm-hmm.
essentially winning people leagues. Another person who, I mean, if you played this guy, like we talked about, this was someone like a best ball setting, or if you're in a deeper league. Hell, I mean, with the injuries, you had a lot of guys go out late. So Demarcus Robinson wasn't the worst option. And
Mm-hmm.
he went off. 6, caught all of them for 8 and a touchdown, 20 points. I mean, entirely has taken over and expanded the role that Tutu Atwell had. Um, he played 93% of snaps. So we know like what and who he is to this offense now. And that's good to say. I mean, effectively, the fantasy season is over, but if you have another week, he's a pretty decent option.
Yeah.
Other than that, the kicker, Luke Haversick, did end up proving to be a good option, got 12 points. So, but yeah, that'll be all for this one.
Yeah. I
Take us
mean,
into.
our Saturday games, which this first one I had a bit more hope for the Bengals. It was the Bengals at the Steelers. The Steelers absolutely destroyed the Bengals. And you know what? We should have known this. Mike Tomlin doesn't finish with losing records. We should have known that the Steelers would win this game. But at the same time, it was Mason
Yeah, but
Rudolph.
they had just lost to the Patriots and the Cardinals at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything was Jake Browning had been doing well. The Bengals have been playing well, winning
Mm-hmm.
games, coming in against a reeling team. I started Jake Browning in in Sevens League. Obviously, that ended up losing me the chance to go to the championship because for some reason it's 2-week playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the Steelers won this one 34-11. Jake Browning, yeah, I agree. I did like his start. The Bengals were without Jamar Chase, so that did hurt them, but still. Jake Browning still threw the ball 42 times, completed 28 of them for 335 yards, threw a touchdown, but had 3 interceptions, also a single carry for 0 yards. 16.4 fantasy points. Like you said, I mean, yeah, it was a bad week. It was a bad week. It wasn't a god awful week like we'll see in some of these later matchups, but for
Yeah,
people
yeah.
we
The
considered
three
starting,
interceptions was what did it.
yeah, I mean, he would have finished above 20. So it was, yeah, not a great week by Browning, but you pass for 335 yards and complete 28 passes. There are some people that could benefit from that. One of them is not Joe Mixon. He carried the ball 11 times for 43 yards, caught 2 of his 4 targets for 7 yards, gave us 9 fantasy points on 59% of snaps. I'm sure there's teams out there that have Joe Mixon and Kamara and just got 17 and a half combined from them. And that sucks. That is very tough. Again, the Steelers are not good against the run. Their defense isn't really good at all, other than causing havoc and creating turnovers. And Mixon was kind of spelled out of this game. And
They did just that this game.
Yeah, and it's not like Chase Brown came in and saw all this volume. He only played 22% of snaps, carried it 4 times for 16 yards, caught both his targets for 8, gave him 4.4. It was just the Bengals went down and did not run the ball. And they actually had a good amount of time where running backs weren't even out there. So, I mean, it just was not a good game running the ball for the Bengals. Someone that did benefit heavily from Jamar Chase missing was T. Higgins. He was targeted 8 times, caught 5 of them for 140 yards and a touchdown, 25 fantasy points. A guy that has disappointed me all season. If you happened to make the playoffs or a championship with T. Higgins and you rolled him in this one, he was there for you when you needed him the most. It is a reminder that T. Higgins is very good at football. Tyler Boyd, I don't hope anyone started him, but if you did, I mean, he did okay for your flex. He was targeted 7 times, caught 5 of them, 59 yards, 10.9. Solid week. Trenton Irwin, 4 targets, caught all 4, 37 yards, 7.7. And our leading tight end was Drew Sample, who played 55% of snaps, caught all 3 of his targets, 38 yards, 6.8. Our guy Tanner Hudson had finally a dud week. He gave us like 1 point something. It's just, we weren't looking to start any of them because normally no Bengals tight end gets above 50%, but I guess Drew Sample was able to this week. The Steelers side of the ball. Mason Rudolph. 17 of 27, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 2 carries for 4 yards, 20 fantasy points even. He outscored Jake Browning. Like, what world are we? But again, obviously we were not looking to start Mason Rudolph. And here's the even tougher part about that, is going into this week, we'd seen George Pickens have just multiple bad weeks. We'd seen him not be willing to block. We'd seen Deontay Johnson be the only guy that we're really like, okay, he gets the volume. We can start him, but even he's a bit of a risky play. Well, Deontay Johnson gets 5 targets, catches 2 of them for 15 yards, gives us 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
George Pickens, targeted 6 times, catches 4 of them for 195 yards in 2 touchdowns, 35.5. There's no way people were starting it. Like, there's just no way you threw him out there after all the. If I remember the notes right, he'd been single digits like 5 of the past 6 weeks or something like that. Like, it had been bad. If you did start George Pickens, that is absolutely an incredible
I don't know.
start.
I think there were people that started him because I played like the one of the leagues I'm in. Someone started Gabe Davis.
I mean, what's crazy is I like that start more than the George Pickens start.
But people, with the injuries and
you just roll your guy.
Just made plays. Some people just made plays, and if you did, congrats.
Yeah,
Ballsy, but congrats.
and gosh, if you have Deontay Johnson,
yeah, ooh,
it happens. But yeah, I mean, that's like you said though. George Pickens does have the big playability, and those are the plays that win you championships or lose you them. But in this case,
yeah, I'm pretty sure I had Deontay in that, or no, I don't know. I know I had the Bengals defense. I don't know for sure if I had Deontay or not.
It's just, it's a tough one. I mean,
yeah.
Pat Freiermuth played 63% of snaps and went back to not being targeted a single time, gave us 0. It is what it is. The running backs here had decent days. Najee, 19 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. No targets, no catches out the backfield, 13.8. Played 44% of snaps. Jalen Warren played 58% of snaps, including a massive block for George Pickens. Jalen Warren did say, I'm still going to block for him. He lit that dude up, too. Jalen Warren smacked the crap out of him.
Jermaine Pratt.
Yeah. Jalen Warren's a small guy.
Mm-hmm.
Got his lick. I mean, 8 carries, 24 yards, 6 targets, caught 5 of them, 30 yards, 10.4 for Jalen Warren. If you started him or Najee, you knew that you hoped for something in between a 10 to 14 range. They both fell in that range, so neither of them really burnt you, but it is what it is with that game. I did not think it would be George Pickens getting everything and Deontay getting nothing.
Yeah. No, well,
It happens.
similar things happened across the board in the entire NFL this week. So we're going to see a lot of that recurring theme as we go over the game.
Yeah.
Kind of unexpected heroes and disappointing, disappointing letdowns
Yeah.
from guys that we needed to come through. On to this next game, which, just speaking of surprising, in a very critical must-win game for the Bills, they barely scraped by in SoFi Stadium. Kicked a game-winning field goal to beat the Chargers and Easton Stick 24-22.
Yeah.
Very strange outing in this one. Josh Allen gave a Josh Allen day. It was obviously much better than the last week where he only completed 7 passes.
Yeah.
So he was 15 for 21, 237 yards, threw a touchdown, also threw a pass to the Chargers. Can't have too many Josh Allen games without a pick. Has to
Mm-hmm.
get back to that form. Also had 5 rushing attempts for 15 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he finished with 26 points. James Cook, a week after he went absolutely ballistic, he comes crashing back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
Had 20 rushing attempts for 70 yards, but also lost a fumble and did not get a target out of the backfield. So he only finished with 5 points. Very disappointing stuff. Yeah, not much you could do there.
Yeah.
Somebody that, we're excited to roll. He got an insane amount of volume, 20 carries.
Yeah.
Just couldn't get in the end zone, didn't catch any passes, and lost a fumble. And that's what happens. So that's just a letdown.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate. I would hope for better. Yeah, he played 75% of the snaps. It's the most we've seen out of him literally all year.
He give and he take.
Nothing you could do.
No.
Leonard Fournette was the RB2 in this one. Interestingly enough, played 18% of the snaps, got 5 carries for 20 yards, also returned a kick. Don't know what the deal is there, but yeah, Latavius Murray did not get a single carry or target. So interesting to see. Uh, Dalton Kincaid, another disappointment. Only got 2 targets. I mean, Josh Allen completed 15 passes, so just keeping that in mind. Not
Yeah.
too many people were really able to get it done. In fact, genuinely only one person. That was Gabe Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, Kincaid caught one of his 2 targets for 7 yards, 1.7. Dawson Knox caught both of his targets for 26 yards, 4.6. Stephon Diggs, another awful week. Um, I mean, I effectively, the best ball mania, I had my team in the semifinals. Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel, my 3 wide receivers.
Diggs has been
And
consistently bad. Like consistently. It's been
to
terrible to
end
end the
this
season.
year off, yeah, to end this year off, it has been bad.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he had less receiving yards in this one than Khalil Shakir, who caught all 3 of his targets for 45 yards, giving him 7.5. Still zero point 0.4 more points than Shakir, but just awful day out of Stephon Diggs. And then Gabriel Davis, 4 catches on 6 targets for 130 yards and a touchdown, 23 points. You never know when it'll happen, but when it does, it is always extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Story of Gabe Davis. So
Yeah.
it's really all for the Bills. On the Chargers side of the ball, where Easton Stick was 23 for 33, 215 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown or an interception, but carried the ball 7 times for 25 yards and scored the Chargers' only touchdown, giving him 16.6 points. Now you hear that and you wonder how the Chargers almost beat the Bills, because I said the Bills barely scraped by. I'm just going to skip to the end and say that's because of Cameron Dicker. If you had him in your fantasy playoffs champion, he very well could have won you your week.
Yeah.
Kicked 5 field goals and an extra point. He scored 21 points. So
Massive week.
huge week. Other than that, there was not too much on the side of the Chargers. Austin Eckler was able to eke out double digits. 15 attempts, 65 yards, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 29. So he got 11.6 points. If you stuck with him, I guess he didn't kill you, but that definitely didn't really help you.
Yeah.
There wasn't really, Gerald Everett had 8 targets, caught 7 of them, 42 yards, 11.2 out of him, which is a decent week out of a tight end.
Yeah.
You decided to go with him. Other than that, Keenan didn't play. Josh Palmer had 8 targets, caught 5 of them for 47, 9.7 points. Not really that great, but I wasn't really looking forward to starting anybody on the Chargers. I said I was pretty much avoiding them.
Yeah.
And with the exception of Cameron Dicker, there's not really much to look back on and say I regret saying that. So,
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston only got 5 points. Alex Erickson got 5.6. Stone Smart got 3.3. It wasn't. So that's really all for that one.
Yeah. Well, that'll take us to our Sunday morning games, where this first one was pretty interesting. It was the Browns traveling to Houston and taking on the Texans, a game the Browns won 36-22. Joe Flacco continued to just...
The funny thing about this game was at a certain point, the Browns lost their kicker.
Yeah.
So every 4th down, they were just going for it.
Yeah.
So he was just throwing the ball the hell up.
Dude, the Browns, this season for them, it needs to be studied. If they and they probably will.
One of the weirdest seasons. They're going to make the playoffs. But this has been one of the weirdest seasons I've ever seen in my life. They're on their 4th quarterback.
No Deshaun. Nick Chubb, they lost, beginning of the, credit to the Browns.
That's what I was saying. Myles Garrett, DPOY, for sure.
Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year?
Probably.
It's just incredible that Joe Flacco is 38. All right. Joe Flacco, again, an incredible day. 27 of 42, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 carries for a single yard, 26.82 fantasy points. He's a good
one.
Dude,
of all those quarterbacks that I'd brought up in the previous episode, he was definitely the one to roll with.
Joe Flacco. Just get him to January, right? Wasn't that the nickname, or was it February?
January Joe, but they ain't doing nothing.
But Joe Flacco, another just incredible day. You see 368 yards, you're like, dang, bunch of guys ate, right? Wrong. 2 guys ate. 1 guy mainly. Amari Cooper. If you played against him, you probably lost. If you had him, you probably won.
Yeah.
15 targets.
in Dynasty because of that guy.
15 targets, 11 catches, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 51.5 in full
Broke
PPR.
the Browns single game record.
That's his career day. That's the Browns' career. From Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's name is being tied to that in the history books for the Browns. Have a day, Amari Cooper. Another guy where he's been sketchy at a lot of points through the year. Mainly not his fault, just due to the quarterback situation. Comes through when people need him the most. Just out of nowhere. I mean, not out of nowhere. Joe Flacco's there. We have all the faith. And the other guy is David Njoku. Targeted 9 times, caught 6 of them, 44 yards and a touchdown, 16.4 fantasy points. No other receiver really did anything. It was just... He knows his guys, and he finds them incredibly well. And on the ground, that was basically all of their scoring. On the ground, Jerome Ford got in the end zone, but he was extremely inefficient. He carried it 15 times for 25 yards and got that touchdown. Saw 2 targets, caught 1 of them, -2 yards. Gave us 9.3 on 43% of snaps. Not a terrible week. For what we expect from Jerome Ford especially, it's in the realm of possibilities, but his inefficiency on the ground really hurt him. And also I thought he would get a couple more targets than he did.
Yeah, but
It just
Amari got everything.
everything, and he caught everything, so rightfully so. Kareem Hunt carried it 7 times for 11 yards, also very inefficient. Scored a touchdown on the ground. Saw 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 5 yards, played 38% of snaps, gave us 9.6. It just was not a good day to run the ball, and it did not matter because they were able to pass the ball so well. I thought the Browns' defense could possibly be a good start. They gave up more points than I thought they would. Case Keenum was not good in this one after he had a pretty decent week the past week. He played 49% of snaps, completed 11 of his 17 passes for 62 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 0.48. Case Keenum. It is what it is. Davis Mills came in for the other half, played 51% of snaps, completed 15 of his 32 passes for 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns without an interception, 2 rushes for 9 yards, 16.86. There's some hope for the receivers, is through Davis Mills now. Devin Singletary.
Yeah, he got a 2-point conversion too.
Yeah, it just...
The offense actually
did significantly better with him than Case Keenum. Devin Singletary only played 44% of snaps. He was actually very efficient running the ball. He had 9 carries for 44 yards. Saw 3 targets, caught all 3 of them for 19 yards, 9.3 fantasy points. Dameon Pierce, again, only played 15% of snaps. He has a very funny stat line.
Yeah.
3 carries for 6 yards. 1 catch for his 2 targets for 10 yards. He was returning kicks. And
he returned one
for a touchdown, which gave him 8.6 fantasy points. If you did start Dameon Pierce, there you go, dude. His special teams touchdown out of nowhere. That's what he's been relegated to. We saw this happen with Antonio Gibson last year with the Commanders, where they just didn't trust him, so they said, go return kicks. Well, Antonio Pierce said, or Dameon Pierce, Antonio Pierce. Dameon Pierce returned a kick. Just I just can't stop thinking of Antonio Pierce just running back a kick against the okay. And going to Nico Collins, he was not completely healthy for this one. He only played 47% of snaps. He did see 6 targets, which he caught 4 of for 18 yards and a touchdown, as well as a 2-point conversion, which gave him 13.8 fantasy points. Noah Brown went back to reality a little bit. He was targeted 7 times, but only caught 3 of them for 38 yards, giving him 6.8. And Dalton Schultz was actually the most targeted Texan on the day. He was targeted 11 times, caught 8 of them for 61 yards, 14.1 fantasy points. A very solid day for Schultz. And also Nico Collins, if you did throw him in there, 13.8 is a very solid week as well. But not enough again. And it sucks because the Texans were looking very promising. And I truly believe without, obviously the injuries to Stroud and Tank Dell, this team would definitely be a playoff team. But now that is a bit into question. But that is all I had.
All right. Well, on to the next game, which I said this week was just full of very interesting games. We had the Seattle Seahawks going to Tennessee, and the Titans, who lost to Case Keenum and company last week, put up an extremely good fight against
Mm-hmm.
the Seahawks, who beat the Eagles last week.
Yeah.
So nothing matters, as it said, any given Sunday, and we're really seeing that at this point. I mean, the Falcons lost to the Panthers this week, and we'll get to that game, but they beat the Colts this week. It's any
Yeah.
given Sunday, anything can happen.
Yeah.
So the Seahawks, honestly, we saw a few disappointing performances in this one. I mean, Geno Smith, if you did start him, I wouldn't say it was the worst possible performance, but definitely could have been better.
Yeah.
He was 25 for 36, 227 yards, 2 touchdowns, had one rushing attempt for 2 yards and lost a fumble. Finished with 17.3 points. So anything sub 20 in uh, championship
It's
uh,
tough.
week, it's really tough. Even probably tougher to deal with was the performance of Ken Walker. He had 16 attempts for 54 yards, caught one of his 2 targets for 2 yards, finishing with 6.6 points.
Yeah.
So that one kind of hurt. Titans have been fairly good against the run, but yeah, definitely shut it down on Sunday.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no running the ball for the Seahawks in any successful manner. Zach Charbonnet tried twice, didn't get a yard. Caught one of his 2 passes for -4 yards, so Charbonnet finished with .6 points. The Seattle running backs did not do anyone any favors on Sunday.
No.
Someone who did, though, was Tyler Lockett. Had 11 targets, caught 8 of them for 81 yards, so he finished with 16.1. You threw him in your flex or something, which was very likely given the injuries and so on and so forth. For example, Jaden Reed ended up, he was questionable, ended up missing, so
Yeah.
he might have had to make a pivot. Tyler Lockett was a decent flex option to begin with,
Yeah.
and he proved to do well, as did the other two Seattle receivers, honestly. JSN had 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 61 yards. 12.1 points out of him. I would say that's a pretty decent week.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen him coming on as a very important part of this offense. So, pretty impressed with him. Definitely excited to see what he does next year. He played 63% of the snaps. So, DK Metcalf did DK things, scored a touchdown. Unfortunately, didn't have the most volume, but the touchdown definitely got him where he needed to go.
Yeah.
Or 4 catches on 6 targets for 56 yards. So he ended with 15.6 points. We will take that. Uh, the guy who got the other touchdown was Colby Parkinson. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 17 yards and that touchdown, giving him 10.7 points. No, you're not starting him, but there it is.
Mm-hmm.
On to the Titans side of the ball, where Will Levis did not play in this one. He was out with an injury, so we saw Ryan Tannehill. He was 18 for 26, 152 yards, 2 rushing attempts for 37 yards, and lost a fumble, 9.8 points. The typical Ryan Tannehill stat line that we saw for the most part of this year before Will Levis came in.
Yeah.
So right back to what we saw to him, and right back to the Derrick Henry of old. Had one pass attempt that he completed for a 12-yard touchdown, 19 rush attempts for 88 yards and a touchdown, and caught his lone target for 11 yards. So he finished with 21.4 points. Said we loved the start this week, and he came through for you.
Yeah.
So good job, Derrick Henry. Tyjae Spears actually had a pretty decent day too. Had 9 rushing attempts for 40 yards. Also had 6 targets out of the backfield that he caught 5 of for 27 yards. So he finished with 11.7 points. Pretty great day out of him, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely looking forward to, and he played 56% of the snaps to Derrick Henry's 48. So looking forward to next year, he is someone I'm very interested in due to the fact that Derrick Henry will likely be moving on. So he'll probably be the RB1 there in Tennessee, and interested to see how they use him if they continue. I mean, as far as we've seen, he'll get a lot of targets out of the backfield. So if that continues, should be a decent running back to roster next year.
Mm-hmm.
The other bright spot in Tennessee was Chig Okonkwo. He was the one on the receiving end of Derrick Henry's touchdown pass, and he also got 6 targets, which he caught all 6 of for 63 yards. So he finished with 18.3. Very good day out of him if you happen to start him or have him in some sort of best ball format. Treylon Burks had 1 rush attempt for -3 yards, had 3 targets that he caught 2 of for 25. 4.2 points out of him. Not too good, but better than D-Hop. He only had 4 targets, which he caught 2 of for 20 yards. 4 points. So,
why did he go to Tennessee?
Money.
I...
Just money.
You know what? I'd have done the same. Is what it is. I can't even hate on him for it.
Yeah. Nonetheless, disappointing fantasy season in general out of him. Definitely a disappointing end to the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be all for now.
Well, to take it to disappointing ends to fantasy seasons, there was a decent amount on one side of the ball in this game. It's the Commanders of the Jets. The Jets were able to win 30-28. Why the Jets want to win football games, I don't know. Honestly, Slaw's probably trying to save his job, so can't blame him. It was another very disappointing week for Sam Howell, who ended up getting benched again for Brissett, and Ron Rivera has said going forward, Brissett will be the starter. So we'll see how that plays into next season. But Sam Howell was 6 for 22 for 56 yards. No touchdowns and 2 picks on 56% of snaps. We thought the Case Keenum stat line was bad. Sam Howell finished with 0.24 fantasy points.
Yeah.
And we had him as a regular season winner because he was. He was a top 10 fantasy quarterback through the regular season, a guy that obviously was not drafted. He did his thing. Now, after last week, getting benched and everything, coming in to play the Jets, it wasn't exactly a favorable matchup. We did recommend making a pivot, but yeah, Sam Howell, it's just tough to see. And then Brissett did come in and, again, played pretty solid on his 44% of snaps. He was 10 of 13 for 100 yards even, threw a touchdown, no picks, carried it once for 10 yards, 9 fantasy points. No receivers had a good game in this one. I mean, there was 156 yards total thrown. So it was a very rough day. Scary Terry was targeted 5 times, caught 3 of them for 50 yards, gave us 8. Very tough after the success he had last week. Curtis Samuel's been a guy that's gotten in the end zone and been involved. Well, he was targeted 6 times, Only caught one of them for 16 yards, carried the ball twice for 4 yards, gave us 3 fantasy points. And Jahan Dotson to complete the Holy Trinity, 4 targets, 2 catches, 31 yards, 5.1 fantasy points. 16 fantasy points combined from the top 3 receivers for the Commanders. It was rough.
Yep.
Antonio Gibson saw some. Nah, not really. I mean, he got in the end zone. He carried the ball 9 times for 30 yards, got in the end zone. Saw 2 targets, caught one of them for 2 yards, 10.2, 44% of snaps. If you did have to start him due to injury, whatever the case may be, it's not a terrible week, especially from what we'd expect from him. You should have had similar expectations. Chris Rodriguez was the star of the show for the Commanders. He carried it 10 times for 58 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1 target out the backfield, caught it, 7 yards, 19.5, 39% of snaps. No one was starting him. Vultured, 2 touchdowns. It is what it is. Just a tough week.
I don't know. He worked for that.
No, I know, but in fantasy wise, we're not looking at Chris Rodriguez to get the touchdowns and stuff, and he comes in and gets 2 of them. Not Terry, not Samuel. He did work for him.
The ball.
No,
they couldn't pass. That's all they could do. And I mean, you could run against it. I mean, I get it. It's just he went on.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. And the Jets side of the ball, I didn't write down too many names for the Jets because one, we only had. I'll get into it, covered as I go. Trevor Siemian was the starter. 27 of 49, 217 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 4 carries for 18 yards, 11.48. It's Trevor Siemian. Shout out the Broncos. Breece Hall. Another league winner on the week. 20 carries for 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. 16 targets out the backfield. Caught 12 of them for 96 yards. 43.1 from Breece. Huge week. In a week we loved the start. I mean, it's the Commanders. Their defense is horrendous. Garrett Wilson was targeted 13 times. Caught 9 of them for 76 yards. Also had a carry for negative 8 yards. 15.8 fantasy points. Solid week for him. And Tyler Conklin, another name that we've been interested through the year. He was targeted 7 times, caught 4 of them for 36 yards, 7.6. It was the Breece and Garrett Wilson show. And especially Breece just absolutely ate and came through for fantasy owners. But that was it. It was just another ugly week on the Commanders' side of the ball. I'm surprised they were able to get 28 points.
Yeah. What a game, right?
An ugly game. Yeah.
What a game. Another game that ended up being very close was the Detroit Lions heading to Minnesota to play the Vikings. The Vikings actually had a chance to go down and win the game on the final drive, and Nick Mullins, of course, threw his final pick of the game. Lions won 30-24. Jared Goff, I'd say, I mean, it was a disappointing performance. Completed 30 passes on 40 attempts for 257 yards, but only 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
Also had 3 rushing attempts for no yards, so 14.3 points out of him. Seeing they scored 30 points, someone had to do the work, and it was the running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs had 15 attempts for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fortunately lost a fumble, but also had 7 targets, which he caught 4 of for another 20 yards. So another 100 total yard day for him. He has been going crazy. Moving forward, he's a great option.
Yeah.
He's clearly not getting put into the DeAndre Swift role. They know what they have with him, and they plan on using it clearly, they're not shying away from using this guy, and he's proving why he was a good pick where they picked him.
Yeah.
He's going off.
Yeah.
And that tandem at running back is just doing great. So, 24 points for him. David Montgomery, a little lesser, but still had a really good day. 17 attempts for 55 yards and a touchdown. Also caught both of his targets for 14 yards, 14.9 points out of him. So,
Very solid.
yeah. And interestingly enough, Jahmyr Gibbs played 58% of the snaps. Montgomery only played 39. But,
Yeah.
someone that has just been great for us for this entire year, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
The almond man.
What? The sun god. He went off. 12 catches on 14 targets for 106 yards and a touchdown, 28.6 points. Have a day, Amon-Ra. Jamison Williams actually had a good day. Played only one less snap than Josh Reynolds, and definitely outperformed him. Got 6 targets, which he caught 5 of for 43 yards, 9.3 points. Hopefully moving forward into next year, he's someone that will be relevant for fantasy purposes. He's a very good wide receiver.
Yeah.
Khalif Raymond got 2 targets, caught them both for 29 yards, had 1 rushing attempt for 8 yards, 5.7 points. Another one on the disappointing list, Sam Laporta. Only had
Yeah.
3 targets, which he caught all of for 18 yards, 4.8 points. So, tiny
That's a
violin.
tough one.
Yeah, Sam Laporta, championship week. Not good. On to the Vikings, where Nick Mullins completed 22 of his 36 passes, 411 yards and 2 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So, yeah. He also had 1 rush attempt for 1 yard, 20.5 points. So, still got 20 points, but had he not thrown 4 picks, it would have been a little bit better. Yeah, that's all out of him. But he clearly provided for a few people.
Yeah.
Ty Chandler they were down a lot of the game. They weren't really going to be able to run. They only did so 10 times with their running backs.
Yeah.
Ty Chandler played 65% of the snaps. Madison played 9%. And they had CJ Ham, the fullback, out there 31% of the snaps, which just tells you, they have a guy out there in pass pro more than they have guys out there to run the ball that were not in a position to run the ball.
Yeah.
But Chandler did have 8 attempts for 17 yards and a touchdown, 7 points. If you did start him, I guess it did not absolutely destroy you, but yeah, not great either.
No.
Not as bad as Madison, though. Only had 2 attempts for -1 yard.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But Justin Jefferson, he was all the way back in this one. 6 catches on 10 targets for 141 yards and a touchdown. And every year it seems he has a catch of the year type play, and he added in this one. I think it was 3rd and 23, 30 something. He goes up and makes catch in double coverage. It was incredible. 26.1 points out of him. Have a day, Jettas. We did see Jordan Addison only play 38% of the snaps in this one, and he left with an injury. We also saw TJ Hawkinson leave this game with an injury.
Yeah.
So it was fairly painful. Fortunately for Hawkinson, he was able to grab all 4 of his targets for 58 yards before exiting this game. So he at least left you with 9.8 points. On the other hand, Jordan Addison only... Hold on. Did not happen to write that down, unfortunately. But
I know he didn't do much.
no, not at all. But it was, I think, one catch on 4 targets for 2 yards.
Yeah.
Before he left. So that one hurt.
Yeah.
In his absence, KJ Osborne stepped up. Got 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 95 yards and a touchdown, 20.5 points out of him. Great day. Not that I was expecting anybody to start KJ Osborne. Brandon Powell also had a decent day. 3 catches on 4 targets for 53, 8.3 points. And then Josh Oliver, Johnny Munn each got a catch. So that was about it for that one. Another really close game that was kind of surprising.
Yeah. And
It got close at the end. The
yeah.
Vikings kind of stormed back there.
Yeah. My final morning game is another game that I thought would not be that close, and it was the Packers at the Panthers. The Packers were able to win 33-30. We did
In
see
overtime.
exactly in overtime against the Panthers. But we did.
No. Hold on. The funniest thing from this game, did you see what happened with Jair Alexander?
Yes. He's suspended for a game.
Yeah,
Why is he not a captain?
I don't know. I guess he just wasn't that weak or something. But
And he just went out there
anyways
and called it,
the toss
and then almost messed
and
up.
called it. Yeah, and almost messed up. And made the Packers have to kick off in both halves. That was usually the funniest thing that's happened.
And they suspend him for a game. That's your best defender. It is what it is. But yeah, no, I did see that. That's hilarious.
Absolutely.
His explanation of it too, like, is just
was amazing.
He's so dumb, dude. Like, what is wrong?
He was like, I don't know why everybody's laughing.
But yeah, Jordan Love had a fairly solid fantasy week. He finished 17 of 28, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, carried it twice for 12 yards and a touchdown, giving him 23.96 fantasy points, a solid week for him. Aaron Jones, I did not expect to get this much volume, but we know the Panthers are not good against the run, and they took advantage of that. Aaron Jones carried it 21 times for 127 yards. Also saw 3 targets, caught one of them for 8 yards, gave us 14.5 on 52% of snaps. Solid week, would have been a fantastic week if he were able to get in the end zone, but A.J. Dillon took that touchdown. He only played 18% of snaps, carried it 7 times for 12 yards and that touchdown, giving him 7.2. Now, as Schiff mentioned, we did play this game without Jaden Reed and also Christian Watson. So that meant Dontavion Wicks, Romeo Doubs would have to step up a little bit, which to an extent they were able to. Romeo Doubs did have a solid week. He was only targeted 5 times, but caught 4 of them for 79 yards and a touchdown, giving him 17.9. A very solid week if you plugged him in at flex. Even Dontavion Wicks, he only played 39% of snaps before leaving with a chest injury. He caught both of his targets for 29 yards and a touchdown, giving him 10.9. I figured it would be Malik Heath that would then step up. No. Got another young wide receiver, Bo Melton, 24 years old. Like, they have an unlimited supply of 25 and under receivers. It's just, throw him out there. He played 38% of snaps, was targeted 6 times, caught 4 of them for 44 yards. They gave him a rush attempt. Why not? For 7 yards, 9.1. And then Kraft, Mr. Reliable since Luke Musgrave has been out, saw 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 60 yards, 10 fantasy points. The Packers spread the ball out like none other. It's unbelievable how many guys they can just continuously get involved in this offense, but it is something to watch. And the Panthers honestly might have been Bryce Young's best day. Fantasy-wise, regular football-wise, he had a very solid day. He finished 23 of 36, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Carried it 4 times for 17 yards, 22.18 fantasy points. Solid week for Bryce Young. Chuba Hubbard, I expected a little more involvement from. I mean, he got the carries. He had 16 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. Saw one target out the backfield, which he caught for 8 yards. Finished with 12.1 fantasy points. Played 64% of snaps. Miles Sanders is still extremely irrelevant. We saw, I believe it's Caleb Blackshear, come in and get that secondary running back rush attempts. It's unbelievable. Yeah, how expensive of a handcuff Miles Sanders is there. Um, Adam Thielen, we saw be involved through the pass attack. He was targeted 8 times, caught 6 of them for 94 yards, giving him 15.4. You did decide to roll him. It's a solid week. DJ Chark with his random DJ Chark week, which I feel like he has at least once a season. Yeah, that that's good. He was also targeted 8 times, caught 6 of them for 98 yards. Very similar to Thielen, except he got 2 touchdowns, giving him 27.8. Absolutely no one was starting this guy. There's just no way. I don't care how deep your format was, any of that. Maybe best ball if it's extremely deep. He was somewhere on that roster, but just unbelievable that DJ Chark goes off. Tommy Treble was very solid in this one. He saw 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 59 yards, giving him 9.9. And the guy that got left out was Jonathan Mingo. He did play 92% of snaps, but he was only targeted once, which he caught for 9 yards, giving him 1.9. Again, going forward, something to look at because we'll see if Thielen comes back and is a Panther next season, but Jonathan Mingo does still seem to be the wide receiver of the future, but was hoping to see him a little more involved. But that was it from my last game, and I believe you have one more.
Yeah, the Colts went into Atlanta and got waxed by the Falcons.
Yeah.
Don't know how this happened. I'm imagining it's because Michael Pittman didn't play.
Yeah.
Because, good lord. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was back, but it was horrible. Colts lost 29-10. They scored the first touchdown of the game and were only able to kick a field goal for the rest of it. So, Minshew, 20 for 37, 201 yards, and an interception. Also had 4 rushing attempts for 31 yards, 10.1 points. Awful. Jonathan Taylor in his return, 18 attempts for 43 yards, 1 touchdown, did not catch his lone target, 10.3 points. Yeah, I mean, at least he got double digits, but I mean,
Yeah.
it is just disappointing. Very disappointing to see. It's not like the Falcons were insanely good against the run as they were against the pass. But, I mean, the Falcons were only giving up 199 yards per game. Minshew only threw for 201. It is pretty on point for their pass defense. The guy you saw benefit the most, I guess, was Kylan Granson. He had 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 62 yards, 11.2 points from him. And then Will Mallory, the other tight end, or one of the other tight ends, was the next leading receiver. Caught all 4 of his targets for 47 yards, giving him 8.7. Josh Downs got a bunch of close to the line of scrimmage stuff because he caught 6 of his 9 targets for 39 yards, 9.9 points.
Yeah.
Would hope for a lot more in his, essentially replacing Michael Pittman as the wide receiver 1, what you would think in that game, but
Didn't
it just
happen.
didn't really pan out.
Yeah.
Alec Pierce got 7 targets, got 3 of them for 30, and that was really all for the Colts side of the ball. I mean,
Yeah.
he scored 10 points. Taylor Heineke was a little bit better than Gardner Minshew. 23 for 33, 229 yards and a touchdown. Had 2 rushing attempts for 10 yards, 14.2 points. Whatever. Bijan had 12 attempts for 72 yards. caught 7 of his 10 targets for 50 yards. So he got 19.2 points. That's what we like to see out of Bijan.
Yeah.
Just feed him. Tyler Algier was also extremely efficient in this game because the Colts were just terrible against the run. I mean, they were giving up 127 yards per game, and we kind of saw they couldn't tackle at all.
Yeah.
Algier had 9 attempts for 69 yards and a touchdown. Also caught his lone target for 19 yards. So he finished with 15.8.
Mm-hmm.
Great day out of the Atlanta backfield. Even Cordero Patterson had 7 attempts for 26 yards. Caught both of his targets for 7. Only 5.3 points, but we weren't starting CPAT anyways, nor were we really starting Algier. So Kyle Pitts, though, he had himself a day. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 49 and a touchdown. 13.9 points out of him. If you started him, good job. I started him in a league to get myself to the championship, so
That's disgusting. That is so
I did what I
disgusting.
had to do.
Who's your other tight end?
I think I had Darren Waller.
Carry on. Carry on. That's...
Drake London, not so good. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 39 yards, 6.9 points. Jonnu Smith caught 4 of his 6 targets for 32, 7.2. And Young Wei Koo kicked 5 field goals and 2 extra points, 19 points. Yeah, definitely winning numbers out of a kicker.
Some of the kickers went crazy this week.
Some of the kickers did a lot better than some, like they outscored
Quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks. Alvin Kamara, like first round picks were outscored by kickers this week.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that'll do it for this one, guys. We will be back. We're going to have to split it up a little bit because we got some things that we got to get done. So we're going to do a Thursday night preview, and we're going to do that separate, and then we'll come back with all of the rest of our recaps. So stay tuned. We'll be back with that. See you guys later.
Sir.